is the Banner Baseball Show. Paul Mancano and Andy Kostka live on a Tuesday in early September. Beautiful week for baseball, and that's exactly what the Orioles are doing at Oriole Park at Camden Yards this week, taking on the Chicago White Sox. They won the series opener yesterday. We're going to touch on the road trip, the 3-3 road trip that the Orioles just came back from, touch on some struggling Orioles, and have our concern panic meter for Adley Rutschman, Corbin Burnes, and a couple more injuries added to the injury list. But first, Andy, everybody wants to hear about the fantasy football roster, so I'm just going to run through mine for our Baltimore Banner fantasy football team. At quarterback, Joe Burrow. Starting at I'm not going to do that. Nobody wants to hear about fantasy football. That's just a truism in life.
Yeah,
nobody. For those watching live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, you're getting to see Andy's fantasy football roster. And if you're not, you should be watching live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, because we have a lot more to offer than just Andy's starting lineup. How do you think the draft went yesterday, Andy? We did a draft with 14 teams.
Never
done Baltimore Banner.
Never done 14 before. So by the 8th round, I was kind of scraping the barrel on the relevant players to be, a flex option. I stacked Packers as I always do. I'm a diehard and usually do die hard when it comes to the Packers. Usually I fail in fantasy because I stack so many Packers, but I'd rather lose cheering for the players I want to win rather than cheering for players I have no connection to.
That's true. I also, even though none of these people are actually on my roster, I go with an all-character team. If you have character concerns, hit the bricks, pal. I'm not drafting you. I'm leaving you to the street. I want a solid locker room culture in my franchise, and that's why I will opt for a much worse player if it means getting the better culture guy, even though that doesn't matter at all. All right, Andy, let's break down this Orioles team right now, because they're coming off a 3-3 trip to LA and Colorado. And then yesterday they crushed the Chicago White Sox on Labor Day. And it feels like the best of times and the worst of times, depending on who you ask, because this Orioles team is still just a half game behind the New York Yankees in the AL East, competing in one of the toughest divisions in baseball, could be one of the top seeds in the playoffs in a month's time. And yet they are still playing sub 500 ball since the start of July. Really a glass half full, glass half empty situation. And we've talked to John Mioli, another writer on the BaltimoreBanner.com, where you can subscribe $1 for 6 months. And he talks about how they break his brain because we don't know what to make of this team right now. Are they closer to the team that we saw for the first 2 months of the season? Or are they closer to the team that we've seen for the last 3?
Was there a question in there?
I have no idea. I mean, is there a question to be asked with this team?
What are they? I don't know. I'm kind of in the John Mioli camp of I don't necessarily know what to make of this team. I think just let's start from the top. Why not? We start with the lineup. Since July, it has been tough sledding for this offense. They were phenomenal for the beginning of the season, first 2 months especially. June, it was. You saw a little bit of wavering. July and August were, especially difficult months for Baltimore. I'm not that concerned yet. I know I probably should be. I know Twitter is concerned. If you look at my mentions yesterday, I was getting demolished for offering my opinion. Last time I ever say what I think on Twitter, I suppose. So don't
worry, the election is coming up, so that'll be just an even better time.
Yeah. It is, it is Panicville in Baltimore, which seems to be the base state of this fan base. When it comes to, since this team has become good, this fan base seems to panic at the drop of a hat. This is a little bit more than a drop of a hat. It's more like the drop of a bookshelf these last 2 months. Because it is concerning with a lower half offense. Hitting with runners in scoring position has been a struggle for most of the season. 17th in batting average with runners in scoring position before yesterday. I didn't check what the updated stats were today. Yesterday was still, they left 16 guys on base overall. Yeah, they scored 13 runs, but if you read my game story, which I hope you did, I tried to write like, yeah, they won 13-3. They had a 6-run sixth inning. They looked great in the last couple innings of the game, but entering the fifth inning, it was a 3-2 ball game. And that is what this team has been for the last 2 months, if not a little more. And a lot of close games, putting pressure on their defense, putting pressure on their pitching staff. And, you know, that's a recipe for disaster when it comes to facing better teams. Against the White Sox, you had so many opportunities to score. Eventually they broke through. It's the White Sox. That is going to happen, with all due respect to Chicago. Love the South Side. Great ballpark. Underrated ballpark, actually. Don't at me. But I do. It was one of those things where it was, if you get that many runners on base, you're almost going to luck into runs. And of course, at the end, Cedric Mullins had a good performance. Austin Slater had probably his best performance so far as an Oriole. 3 hits for him and 3 RBIs. Gunnar Henderson had a leadoff homer, which tied him for, with 34 this year, ties him with Cal Ripken Jr. in 1991 and Miguel Tejada in 2004 for the most ever by a shortstop in Baltimore. And you expect him to break that with still a month to play. So I guess the answer here is that there is still so much potential, and you know what this team can do. Yesterday showed a glimpse of what they can do, but there is that asterisk of, it was against the White Sox. They still stranded, 16 runners on base. They didn't hit efficiently with runners in scoring position. They have infrequently scored in bunches this year. A lot of close games. Heading into the late innings in tight games is going to put pressure on a bullpen that has had its ups and downs. We can get to maybe the bullpen a little bit more later, but if we have time. But just looking at the bullpen right now, you have a new closer in Sir Anthony Dominguez. Craig Kimbrell does not look as if he has figured his season out. He is giving up runs even in lower leverage roles. Seventh inning, for instance, again on Saturday against the Colorado Rockies, gave up 2 runs and that ended up losing the game. So there's concerns, and it needs to be figured out before October hits. But they have a month here, and it will be coming down to the wire. And props to them for being in the fight. You'd have to be in this situation, they've played poorly, and yet they're in a playoff spot right now, and they could win the AL East still. So at the end of the day, this is probably where you want to be. If you told fans that you're going to be neck and neck with the first place team in the AL East and firmly in a wild card spot when the calendar hits September, I think most would say, sounds good. Let's put together a final good month. I think Baltimore is in a position to do that.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to make the playoffs almost definitely, and nothing would surprise me when they get there. If they were to get there and be swept like they were last year, that wouldn't surprise me, because I'd say, yeah, okay, I guess since the start of July, they've been this team. They've been a subpar team. If they get to October and they go on a crazy hot run and they find themselves in the Fall Classic, I wouldn't be shocked either, because you'd say the signs were there for the first half of the season and they just needed to get everybody healthy and on the same page. There are some concerning factors, however, with this team. Their star players, a couple of them, have been struggling, and that is the most concerning issue when you look at October, when your stars need to shine the brightest. It starts with Corbin Burnes, and I want to get your thoughts on a scale of 1 to 10, a panic meter, if you will, a concern level. Let's start with Corbin Burnes and the tough August that he had, because he was the ace that they traded for the first half of the season and then some. He was elite. He was averaging a quality start, basically. And then he hits August, and it's a 7.36 ERA in 5 August starts, his fewest innings of any month, 25 innings. And frankly, he was lucky that ERA wasn't higher, because in his final start of the month, he gave up 6 runs, and 5 of those were unearned because of an error by Ramon Arias in LA. He took 3 straight losses against Boston, Houston, and the Dodgers. Now, he had a bounce back start yesterday, first start of September. 5 innings, 2 runs, 1 of them was earned, a walk, 4 strikeouts against the White Sox. Some of those early struggles that he had came on soft contact, so I don't want to say he was, perfect, but he also wasn't awful. And he struggled at times with command, but he was also facing the worst offense in Major League Baseball, maybe the worst team in Major League Baseball. How concerned are you right now with Corbin Burnes' rough August and the command that he has lacked at times, and where he is right now with a month to go before the playoffs?
I'm not that concerned with Corbin Burnes, because the Corbin Burnes we saw in August didn't pitch that differently than the Corbin Burnes we saw in July and earlier. He was still getting soft contact. I mean, there are certain pitches you could look at. I mean, the 3-run homer against the Dodgers, when he hangs a breaking ball in the middle of the zone, that's going to hurt you, and he knows that, and that's a bad pitch, but overall, it's not like his whiff rate was incredibly different in August than it was earlier in the year. Looking at it now, he had a 25% whiff rate on all pitches in August, which was his lowest of the season. But in June, which he had a great June, his whiff rate was 26.6%. So we're talking marginal difference here with swing and miss. His swing and miss has kind of by design reduced this season, and has reduced for a couple seasons. Since his Cy Young, he wants to get early contact. He wants to work deeper into games by keeping his pitch count low, rather than being a strikeout pitcher. He believes, yesterday he was really adamant that, hey, this White Sox scored 2 runs against him in the first inning. 2 of those were 60-mile-per-hour exit velocity bloop singles. One of which was, a cutter way high, out of the zone that a guy somehow, gets enough on to bloop it in. So it was a little bit of, a little unlucky in some situations. Overall, there are things to improve. His cutter placement looked better the last 2 starts against both LA and against the White Sox. So that's a good sign. He's not missing the cutter as much over the middle of the plate. Still needs his breaking pitches, and he's a great breaking ball pitcher, but needs probably a little bit more command with his breaking pitches to avoid that one big miss that blows up his outing. This is a pro, though. I mean, you have to trust that, hey, he's going to figure it out. I would, I saw, I don't know why I see shit on Twitter, and it's like people were ready to dump this guy yesterday. In like the 3rd inning of the game, they were like, Corbin Burnes, this bust, why did we trade for him? And it's like just the swings back and forth, like, go touch grass, people. Go do something with your life. Like, it's so frustrating that like he has 3 innings against the White Sox with guys on base, and it's like, oh my gosh, let's.
I can help. I saw comments that were like, he could. I'll help him pack his bags in October, to go to another team. This team that was about to give him the fan base that wanted to give him like a $600 million contract
in July. Like, we're talking a month, like 5 starts later, and they're think he's a bum. It's just
it's not everybody. It's just this group on Twitter, I think, that panics one way or the other.
Yeah. But needless to say, I am not panicking at this point about Corbin Burnes, because I don't think it's that different from what he was doing early in the year. Needs to refine a little bit. Again, the whiff rate is a little bit down, but that's not a huge concern overall. His hard hit rate really went up in August. So that's the thing, is he wants soft contact. He usually gets soft contact. In August, there were enough, mistake pitches that the hard contact went up against him, which is 95-mile-per-hour exit velocity or higher. I do think he'll get back. He'll figure it out. This is a guy that tends to be a intense self-studier, so he is going to analyze what happened in August and even what happened yesterday, and he's going to try to correct it. But you sign Corbin Burnes for a reason. You sign him so he can pitch in October.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And he's got
And then you
3 starts.
traded, but you get my
Right, exactly. And he's got 4 starts. If he makes a start every 5 games, like he's planning to do for the rest of the regular season, he'll have basically 3 starts to get right, to get back to his old form, and then he's got a shove in that 4th start against Tampa Bay, at Detroit, and at home against Detroit for his next 3 starts if he stays on schedule, and then at the Yankees in that huge pivotal, what the Orioles hope will be a battle for the AL East at the end of September, which is hopefully going to be, the best start of his life as they go into September and they go into October. And then it's the playoffs after that. So this guy who struggled in August is not the Corbin Burnes that fans saw for the first half of the season. It's not the Corbin Burnes that we saw for the last 3 years when he was in Milwaukee. And it also can't be the guy that goes into game 1 of a playoff series. They just need a better version of Corbin Burnes, and he has a little bit of runway here. Not much, but he has a little bit of runway to get himself back to where he needs to be before they go into the all critical stretch run. On a scale of 1 to 10, I probably have it as a 4 in terms of level of concern, just because he needs to clean up things. Like he said, he needs to keep the breaking ball lower in the zone. Ben McDonald does a great job on the Masson broadcast pointing out how, he at times has left pitches up, like that pitch in LA that he gave up the 3-run homer on. So keeping his pitches lower in the zone, I think yesterday was a good sign. On a scale of 1 to 10, what do you have it, Andy?
I have Matt probably a 6.
Okay.
So more concern than I probably am willing to enunciate. But I think he'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I just think at this stage it's been 5 non-Corbin Burnes starts that we've seen, and even the last one in LA, he was pretty adamant that he took steps in the right direction, and he wouldn't have given up a 3-run homer probably if there had been the 3rd out by Ramon Urias, which actually would have been the first out of the inning, but it would have been 3 outs before the home run occurred. Still leaving that breaking pitch there with 2 guys on base is just such an it's so unlike him to have a mistake like that in a critical juncture. And I think what concerned me most was that it seemed like innings snowballed in him. There was a mistake early in the inning and he wasn't able to shut the door. And that's what concerned me. I think the metrics look pretty similar. He's had a couple of mistake pitches, 1 or 2 pitches that go against him and cause, runs in bunches. But it's usually when you see him at his best and when you see an ace at their best, there's a mistake behind them and they shut the door, and there's, he picks up the defense and that's it,
Yeah.
But we haven't necessarily seen that from Corbin Burnes for the last month. So until we see that again, and he did it a couple of times yesterday with inning-ending double plays, 2 of them, that was maybe a good sign, but again, against the White Sox.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem with your declining strikeout rate, which you mentioned, is he doesn't get as many swing and misses, is he's still relying on soft contact to get out of those jams, and sometimes that soft contact falls in. So I think back to, this start where he struggled a few starts ago against Houston that they lost 6-0, where he was just giving up these ground ball singles that would find a hole in the infield. So
kind of single
right.
And I asked him after the game yesterday. I was curious if I asked, probably jumbled the question in real time, but something along the lines of, when you realize when you see like soft contact is falling in for hits, is there any thought in your mind that, hey, let's ramp back, let's kind of ramp up here and get swing and miss and strikeouts, which he hasn't necessarily done this year, hasn't shown the be it game plan that he doesn't want to do that, or for pitch count purposes, hasn't really wanted to say, let's try to get as many strikeouts as possible. And he said that he believes that, when he's getting soft contact, it means his pitch locations are good, his shapes are good, and the result is going to be good eventually. He said, right now you're in a rut, but stick with that process and the result is going to be good. That's what he believes. He's going to stick with it.
Yeah. All right. One more thing to touch on before we get to Adley Rutschman's struggles. Injuries have absolutely riddled this roster in the past couple months, and we saw two more guys go down with injuries. One of them hit the injured list. That would be Ramon Arias, and Dean Kramer is had perhaps the largest welt I've ever seen on a right wrist. Both those guys go down with injuries in Saturday's game. Kramer first gets hit with a line drive. That right wrist just absolutely becomes inflamed within seconds. X-rays were negative, so that's positive that nothing is broken there. But Brandon Hyde said he would be surprised if Kramer makes his next start. I would be surprised too. And then Ramon Arias later in that game has his foot caught on third base on a stolen base, and that becomes an issue because he's walking around in crutches. Leaves that game. And Brandon Hyde, when asked about it yesterday, really didn't have much of an update. He said it could be 2 weeks. It could be 4 weeks. He really doesn't know right now. Well, 4 weeks would be the start of the playoffs. So now you're down another third baseman after you've already lost Jordan Westburg. You're down another starter after you've lost half of your rotation, perhaps in another entire rotation. What is your concern level with Dean Kramer's injury? What is your concern level with Ramon Arias' injury right now?
And add Ryan Mountcastle in there, sprained wrist. Don't want to forget about him.
Hitting the IL.
My concern level on injuries is about a 10, as concerned as possible.
Is there higher than a 14? I mean, it's utterly absurd what this team has been hit with right now.
But you mentioned it extremely well. First off, it's tough to know timelines on injuries like a sprained ankle, a sprained wrist. Really difficult. We'll run through them really quickly. Ryan Mountcastle has not picked up a bat to swing, according to Brandon Hyde yesterday. So he's eligible to return off the injured list yesterday. So he's eligible, but it hasn't swung. Brandon Hyde said he has no idea the timeline at all for Ryan Mountcastle. So that's number one. Number two, Ramon Arias. On crutches, sprained ankle. You don't necessarily know the timeline. 2 to 4 weeks, Brandon Hyde guesstimated. That's a concern. Will he have enough time to play games and get ready before the postseason? I don't know. Same with Mountcastle. I don't know. Number three, Dean Kramer. He could throw in the outfield today if the swelling goes down. We will find out in probably 2 or 3 hours whether he actually did throw in the outfield. We'll be there in an hour or so at Camden Yards. So we don't know yet. The thing is sure, the X-rays were negative, but if it's a muscle hematoma, that's incredibly painful, and you don't know exactly the timeline for that to heal either. Is that a miss one start thing? Is that longer? Either way, the concern level for not just those three, but everyone on the injured list is high, because the AAA season ends on August 22. And so that limits, rehab outings and things like that for that last week of the season, where guys could have a ramp up period, play every day at AAA, and then come back ready for the postseason in the majors. Jordan Westburg, who is still, playing baseball one-handed, with just his left hand as his heals his broken, fractured right hand. Will he have enough time in mid to late September to get game action? And what will he look like when he does come back? Because he's been out so long. Grayson Rodriguez has been out for a month or thereabout. When he comes back in mid to late September, what is he going to look like? Does he have enough time to get ready? Jacob Webb, same thing. He's on a rehab assignment with AAA.
Danny Coulomb,
he's been out even longer. What's he going to look like when he gets back? Danny Coulomb has thrown off the mound a little bit, hasn't been in a rehab game as of yet. So there's just so many question marks around all of them. Even if you get them back, are they going to be fully healthy? Are they going to be? Is their swing going to be right? They haven't picked up a bat in 3 weeks. Or, how are they going to feel with their shapes on their pitches? There are so many unknowns, and yeah, I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, and you just lost Jorge Mateo for the rest of the season. He had Tommy John on his non-throwing elbow after that weird collision he had with Gunnar Henderson in the middle of the infield. So he's done for the year. There's another infielder who's out of the mix. My concern level for these guys is like a 9 or 10. I mean, they're playing Emmanuel Rivera at third base and at first base. They just have Nick Maton, who they called back up. I mean, Kobe Mayo is here, and he's exciting because that's a top prospect who could give you something in the future. But it's clear the Orioles don't trust him defensively much at third base, and his early struggles offensively have given them pause about starting him consistently at third base as well, because he's just been a little bit slow to start offensively as a 22-year-old. So boy, this is a team that you think about all the guys that are on the injured list, and you think maybe this is just a sleeping giant, and they are going to get all these guys back just in time, and they're going to roll right into the playoffs. And then you think, well, the reality is not many guys who come back off a long injury stint are able to come back and hit the ground running. They usually need a little bit of runway, and that's what they're dealing with right now is a race against time. All right, let's touch on Adley Rutschman's struggles, because he is not dealing with anything physically, according to Brandon Hyde, but he has been struggling mightily at the plate. He had a great day yesterday, drove in a couple runs. His batting average ticked up a couple notches, but coming into yesterday, he was hitting .257. His OPS was .333. Both of those were season lows. Brandon Hyde, gave him all the credit for trying to get himself out of this and working as hard as he can to get himself out of this slump. He said he's grinding, he's trying to get the feel back, and probably putting way too much pressure on himself. That's who Adley is. Adley is a team leader. He's a captain, and it's tough to talk about him struggling like this because you and I know, Andy, that there are a few guys, in baseball that work as hard as Adley Rutschman. It's just trying to diagnose exactly what's going wrong with him right now. And I talked with John Mioli last week on the show about how Adley had such great prodigious power in the first half of the season, hitting 16 homers before the break. And then the power has dipped significantly since then. And so has the batting average. He's had 2 hits since then. And he's had a lot of times getting under the ball. I mean, he's got his highest rate of getting under the ball, according to StatCast, in his career, 32%, up from 24% last year. And he's not going the opposite way either. So 22% this year compared to 32% last year. That tells me he's not making good enough contact, that he's getting under it, that he's popping a lot of balls up, that he's perhaps trying to hit too many homers right now, and he's not just going where a pitch is hit. And you add that with his sudden lack of patience at the plate, and you have a really struggling hitter right now.
Yeah, Adley is a concern at this point. On that scale, I'd probably say an 8, because you need him to get going. I mean, yeah, you have it right there. 189 average since July 1. Obviously Brandon Hyde said yesterday that he does not have an injury that he's dealing with. But just looking at the numbers since he was hit on the hand by a pitch June 27, he is hitting 182 with a 559 OPS in that span of 49 games. So this is un-Adley like. The defense has still been all right. Struggle throwing out runners, although yesterday with Corbin Burnes on the mound, he's not getting that much help from the pitcher. When I look at him, he's not making mistake. He's not making pitchers pay for mistakes. It's like, yeah, the angle of the bat, he's under the ball so frequently. He's late on fastballs, but late in a way where it's not driving it to the other way, but instead, just making really kind of weak contact or whiffing totally. Yeah, it's a major concern, and we have to see, if he can pull this around. it's not too much time left in the season to kind of get hot.
Yeah.
So this is a big challenge for him. Probably the first time in his life that he has struggled to this magnitude. Um, you can count the first month, but that he was a major leaguer, but now as an established major leaguer, he's used to succeeding at this level. This has been a difficult 2 months.
Yeah, and what is maybe more concerning for me is the lack of patience, because he had a 12-game stretch in August where he did not record a walk. That's the longest stretch that he's had this year, and it's would have been the longest stretch last year because he only had a 7-game stretch like that last year. He's only had 4 multi-walk games this year. Last year he had 20. So maybe he's just seeing all of these guys on the injured list, like Jordan Westberg, and he's saying, I need to do something to make up for it. I need to hit above my weight. I need to hit more homers, drive in more runs. And he's putting a lot of pressure on himself to do that. And he's selling out for power, and he's jumping on pitches that he thinks are mistake pitches early. When instead, what makes him such a good and potent hitter is he has such an eye for the strike zone. He knows which pitches to lay off of, and he knows how to work counts. He came right up in his big league debut in 2022, and he had, the most pitches per plate appearance of any hitter in the first several weeks because he was drawing walks and he was making pitchers throw strikes, and he's not doing that right now. So to see that combined with the poor quality of contact recently, it has been frustrating to watch. And you just hope that he can grind his way out of this. And maybe if they get some guys back in the lineup, there will be less pressure on him, at least internally, so that he can feel like he's going into, October feeling a little bit better about himself than he is right now.
Yeah, you hope for somewhat of a turnaround, and I mean, yeah, it's a tough stretch not only for him, but Gunnar hasn't had the same amount of success he had in the first half. Obviously, a crazy good first half. So Adley is not alone, but
No.
this offense needs Adley.
Yeah, they certainly do. And this pitching staff could use a bounce back performance from Cade Povich, who gets the start tonight in Game 2 of their series against the White Sox. At AF Kostka is his Twitter handle. I'm at Paul Mancano. And the Baltimore Banner is your place to go for everything that Andy and Danielle and Kyle Jamioli have to offer. $1 for 6 months is where you can subscribe. Thanks so much for watching.